Hello, hello. So, welcome to your daily dose of alignment, and this is one of my favorite topics. I love talking about creativity and how to tap into creativity, and how every single one of us has that zone of genius and that ability to be creative and to be in that place where we are able to express on the outside what's on the inside. So I'm Kylie Ansett, the Alignment Whisperer, coming to you from beautiful Sydney, Australia. And I love talking about this topic of alignment. And what is alignment? Well, it's a bit of a nebulous topic, a bit of a hard to get your words around it, but you know it when you're in alignment, and you know it when you're not in alignment. I guess probably the best way to put it in a succinct term would be to say that being in alignment is when you just feel that everything's going your way and that you're in the right place at the right time and the timing's always right, and that feeling where things are working out for you. And being out of alignment is the opposite of that. So of course the goal is to be in alignment as much as possible, and that's what I love talking about. So thank you so much for joining me and playing in this space. And as I mentioned, this is the topic of creative genius, so how to tap into your creative energy. It's really interesting. A lot of the time when I speak with people that I'm working with one-on-one, a lot of people don't think they're creative. They may have the kind of jobs that are very traditionally seen as not creative, or they might be someone who thinks that they're bad at, say, art or something like that. And I really want to dispel that myth, because creativity is not just confined to the more traditional areas like art and writing and things like that. That's just the more obvious areas of creativity. But every time you show up in the world, every time you express your energy in the world, you are actually being creative. You are creating. And every choice you make is a step on that path of creativity. So, it's actually a very beautiful thing to recognize that. Once you recognize it, once you are able to own that you are a creative person, a creative spirit, a creative being, then you can become more intentional about it. And what's the point of being intentional? Well, that's where you create things that are in your zone of genius. You create things that are beautiful. You create things that are meaningful to you, that you create things that make a difference. You create things that light you up. And that can be whether it's the things that you say, the things that you do, the things that you think. Being a parent is a creative thing. Being a friend is a creative thing. So it's not just confined to this more traditional interpretation of creativity, like being an artist. So if you feel that you're not a creative person, think again, because by labeling yourself that way, you're actually shutting down you're shutting down the ability to show up in that way and to play in this sort of beautiful, juicy, wonderful potentiality. Is that a word? But that the area of possibilities. And if you feel that you're not creative, then whatever you believe about yourself is true, because a belief is just a thought that you keep thinking. So every time you tell yourself that story, then you're closing down your opportunity to play in this kind of sandbox of possibilities. And why is that so important? Well, I mean, it's not important. That is the point. It's actually not important at all. It's just so much fun. And rather than being a regurgitator, now I mean, one of my favorite hobby horses is kind of is breaking away from the traditional model of education, which is where so much of us learn about who we are in the world. And it's a really unfortunate system. Unless you are particularly strong in yourself, you are taught that you aren't creative, and you are taught to be a really good regurgitator. You're taught that that is what gives you approval in the world. And by going down that path, especially in those really formative years where you're working out who you are in the world, when you go down that path, you're closing down your creativity. You're closing down you're closing down that place to express and be free and make mistakes and get it wrong, but showing up as a creative person in any forum. You know, it could be as an accountant, it could be in pretty much, you know, any profession or any interaction that you have is a possibility to be creative. You are creating. Every time you're doing something, you are showing up new in the world, and every thought that you have is your thinking of that thought is a creative moment. By recognizing that and by owning that, you then can become intentional about it. And instead of reacting to circumstances that are presented to you, which by its very nature limits what your possibilities are, because if you're only ever reacting instead of being intentionally creative, then your place for creativity is set by someone else's agenda. So instead of being a reactor, being a creator is a different place. You are setting the agenda. And this is something that initially takes a little bit of bravery, maybe a little bit of, it takes a little bit of putting yourself out there, but there's so much more satisfaction in it. So creativity is something that each of us needs to own within ourselves and allow ourselves to be messy and imperfect and to fail and to fall down, but to know that the joy of life comes by having your hands in the clay and being that creator that we all naturally are. Not separating ourselves from it, not just being a consumer or a regurgitator. And it definitely is breaking away from the sort of things that we have been taught from a very young age, because we are so indoctrinated with being in this place of reacting to an agenda someone else has given us by consuming as a sort of very passive consumer, and a regurgitator of something that someone else has created. So I'm going to encourage you today, in this very moment, to embrace and embody your creative spirit in whatever form that takes. Your creative spirit is unique unto you, and it should be something to be embraced and to be adored and to be celebrated in any way that it comes out. And that's your job to do that. You don't put yourself up on a platform to be embraced and acknowledged and adored by others. That's not how it works. That again is a trap where you'll close down your creativity, because then your expression is reliant on the feedback that you get from others. So in this place of playing around with creativity, allow yourself to just be you. And it's such a kind of trite term. It's something that we hear all the time, and it doesn't really have any meaning, but it's not trying to be what someone else expects you to be. It's almost easier to describe what being you is by defining what it's not. It's not being what someone else dictates. It's not regurgitating what someone else has told you. It's not reflecting what from an agenda that someone else has already set. It's not being a reactor. So it's none of those things. What it is going to be totally unique to you. And that's why it's hard to define, because what I am is not what you are, and what you are is not what your next door neighbor is, and so on. Each of us is so individual. And I was thinking about this the other day, and thinking about some of the musicians who have sprung onto the place where we just go, wow, who is this person? And they are so unique. You couldn't have imagined someone like that until they became that person. I was thinking of David Bowie, such a unique individual, or Marilyn Manson. Like we see these people, and then people come after them, and they go, and they try to emulate being David Bowie or being Marilyn Manson. Actually, I don't think anyone does that. But I guess what I was thinking is kind of extreme examples of people who are being so uniquely themselves in such a weird and wonderful way, and it works. And all that weirdness, they're just completely embracing, and they're letting it out there, and they're totally being themselves, and the rest of the world adores that. And a lot of it is not so much that we adore who they are, and of course plenty of people hate them as well, but that's kind of part of it too. You have to be okay, or you have to not care what people think one way or the other. Some will love it, some will hate it, and none of that should be influence how you show up. And I'm sure I just thought of those examples because I was going for a walk and I was listening to music, and a David Bowie song came on, and so that was kind of what set my train of thought off. Imagine if someone like that had worried about what other people thought of him, and how if he thought, maybe I should just tone down on the androgynous thing, or maybe I shouldn't wear all this weird makeup, or like that, we would have missed out. There you go. That's what it is. The world would have missed out if he had have tried to please others. And it's no different. David Bowie or anyone is no different to me or you. And the world is missing out if we don't allow ourselves to show up and express. Now, obviously, as a musician, you have kind of like a world stage. We don't necessarily all have that, but we all have the stage that we have in our lives. How we show up there, the people we interact with, the creativity that we allow to come through us, or that we pinch off because we're trying to please others, or because we don't trust ourselves, or because we are being good little regurgitators, or we're only reacting instead of being the creator, is actually denying the world something that it's hungering for. So don't do that. Allow yourself to be you. Allow that creative genius, that creative spirit to flow through you. So that's what I'm encouraging for you today. That's what I'm wishing for you. in your world and in your life, and I'm going to give you a little mini tiny challenge today, which is for one moment in today, and it could be right now after you're finishing watching this, or it could be later on when you know you've got an interaction with another person, or it could be a place where you're going to be writing or whatever. But do it today. Do it in this day. It's not something that's going to be put off for tomorrow even. It has to happen today. Allow your creativity, even if it's only for a moment. If this is a new activity, even if it's only a moment, allow how you show up in that moment to be totally authentic and totally who you are, not who you are because someone expects you to be, not who you are because of a role that you've taken on, not who you are because of an expectation you've put on yourself. None of that. Just who you are, being you. Just play around with it. See what it feels like. Okay, that's my game for you to play with today, and I hope you kind of have a bit of fun with that. Let me know what you think. I always love to hear your comments, and thank you so much for sharing your time and your energy and for playing with me in this space. I really appreciate you, and I encourage you to go out there and live your life on purpose and live a life of purpose. All right, bye-bye.